You know, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do um, and why we're friends.
Right. Well, I think the friends part kind of comes last, but so I'm the recruitment manager with Big Brothers Big Sisters of South Texas, and so we're in San Antonio. Our offices are in San Antonio, and so like you said, former colleagues. So when you were at Big Brothers Big Sisters, I got to know you pretty well. Similar humor. I think and I still remember this in my interview for this job. I know we talked about movies real quick, and you had mentioned some movies, and I was like, okay, like this seems like a pretty cool guy who like knows his indie films and his Oscar bait, right? Like, and so just getting to know you from then and working with you is I think where the acquaintance and then the friendship came. But as a recruitment manager for Big Brothers Big Sisters, right, we do a one-on-one youth mentoring. So my responsibilities is really trying to just lead the recruitment effort of the mentors that come into our program, right? Whether it's face-to-face interactions, a national night out, a parent-teachers night, right, a PTA meeting. Just really trying to connect with the community, whether it's the families that could use our services, that could use a trusted adult in their lives, or a young professional or somebody that just retired, looking to spend their time with a youth here in San Antonio and create that relationship with them. So
Did you want to do this when you tell us where you went to college? But did you major in the social sciences, or what did you want to do when you were when you right before you came out into the
right.
workforce?
I did my undergrad at Texas Tech, and going into school, I really wanted to. I had the aspiration of being a writer, right? Something really simple but very broad, right? And going through just the different courses, the different English courses, I guess the humanities aspect of it, reading different stories about people, different experiences, really kind of drew me near nonprofit in the nonprofit sector. So once I got into like junior and senior year, it was more so, okay, what kind of work can you do that is fulfilling, but also like is going to be something to sustain a livelihood, right? And so my first job out of college was in that nonprofit aspect. I did development for the Meals on Wheels up in Lubbock, so I did stay like an additional 2 years after school. And then I decided, I was getting homesick, 6 hours away from San Antonio. Decided to move back, and then landed at Big Brothers Big Sisters. And I always joke, but being a recruitment manager is a lot of conversations, a lot of talking, and I can't imagine a better job than talking, getting paid to talk, someone's ears off. So
And it's a lot more than that, right? I mean, mentoring is especially uh, what is happening around the world
right,
or around the country, really, but also it's a global issue. Is the understanding and empathizing with different cultures and races.
exactly.
And so, how much of that do you see in between the bigs and the littles?
Right. I think it's just a really cool example to see the different people that come in to become mentors. They all have different reasons. I've had, people that are in their 20s, 30s, 40s, right, that were former littles growing up. They had a big brother or sister, and now that they've found success or they've, kind of come into their own, they're wanting to give back. I've had, other volunteers that grew up around someone that had a big brother or sister and realized like how much good that did for them. Um, so I think it's really regardless of a background or an ideology thing or even like your ethnicity or race. It's more so that they saw the relationships that mattered. They saw that the relationships that were working and really kind of gravitated towards that. And then with the family aspect of it, it's really sort of the reality of it is San Antonio is really divided, right, in its parts of cities. If you go to a different part of the city, you see some really big differences in infrastructure and kind of the population. And so we recognize that and know that there's certain populations in San Antonio that could benefit from our programs more often. But working alongside the parents and the mentors, I've really just grown appreciative of kind of how everyone has a story and everyone starts somewhere, right? Whether it's becoming a mentor or having that mentor. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. I do want to come back to that, but you also have, since we're the World Affairs Council, you also have international experience because didn't you just miss the
Like the
they pre
cutoff.
the cutoff of travel
Right.
right
Yes.
before it hit? Tell us a little bit
Yes.
about that. And we have
Yes.
Giveaway Mondays, who's joined us. Also, Pedro. Uh, Pedro has also joined us. But yeah, tell us where you went and what that experience was like.
Awesome. Yeah, yeah. So I went with some friends from school, from college to Spain. We spent a couple of days in
Mm.
Barcelona and Madrid. And this was planned for about a year. So actually, remember last April is when we bought the tickets. It was a really great deal. It was something that was like, hey, if we can't make it, we can't make it because of, let's say, a job or something. We never really anticipated a world pandemic to really be one of those reasons. But even at that time, like, Spain, or I think at that time it was still kind of isolated, finger quotes, isolated in like China, had just gotten to Italy, so it was like, okay, well, Spain team's fine. It's not going to get that bad. Um, so we decided to go. Right, JFK, right in New York City, was business as usual. There really wasn't any talk about coronavirus or COVID-19. Even when we got to Madrid and then to Barcelona, the city was really bustling. It was a beautiful city. Both cities are beautiful. And it was my first international flight, first international trip, and
Oh
so
wow.
yeah, it was just a really really cool experience. Especially as a fan of like soccer, watching the Spain national team, and then you have Real Madrid and Barcelona. So being able to actually we went to like a game in Barcelona and kind of seeing that atmosphere, and then enjoying the nightlife and the food. The food was great. There it was really really cool. We saw like the Sagrada Familia, which is Anthony Gaudi's you know um, magnum opus, right? This huge cathedral that's been worked on for 100 years now, and then Park Güell, which is another one of his creations. And so seeing that culture aspect of it, right? These are things that I grew up seeing on TV, and just being there, I was like, oh, this is just a really cool opportunity. But in the back of our minds, we would see, the pandemic kind of going in and out of countries, and so we were like, okay,
Mm.
what's going to happen? Um, and so we actually came back the about 2 or 3 days before the United States went into a full lockdown. We were at least when like Governor Abbott started closing everything. And as a precaution, I was sent home to work from home for 2 weeks. And slowly my friends kind of we started calling each other saying like, hey, we were all sent home just as a precaution. Just because at that point, that's when like Spain, all of a sudden there was these cases found in Spain, and then it was like, wait a minute, like the virus had been in the country for like at least a couple of weeks, if not a month or so. And so for us, for the group of friends that we were all kind of isolated, but this was like an actual quarantine. We couldn't really talk to anybody, go anywhere. We kind of figured that as we saw the news unfold, we kind of figured that in the 2 weeks that our quarantine would be over, the world would sort of just catch up. And that's really what happened. Is at the end of our quarantine, I think we were about a week in of the lockdowns, and so that's kind of what it's been since then. Is working from home, and then kind of getting adjusted to what this reality is, where we're at home for most of our time.
I'm curious. You said you were visiting you went to see a soccer game.
Yeah.
I know in Warsaw, I went to one, and they have a specific section fenced off for adults who
Oh
could
wow.
act a little crazy. Did you see that? It was quite
Right.
remarkable. It's like they allow you to get crazy
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
specific area of the stadium.
We didn't see like a specific area where that was like fenced off or anything, but there was like right behind the, I think it was the home goal or just one of the goals, was like the hooligans, right? Like the soccer hooligans, of like they had their fans, they had all the flags and the chants. They were the ones leading them. So that was really really cool to see. Um, and it was a pretty packed stadium. I think Camp Nou is where Barcelona plays. It holds about 90,000 or something, and it was
Wow.
yeah, it was a pretty packed game. So it's still just crazy to think that like 2 weeks after that, the league was postponed. Nobody could, like nobody was playing, and if they were, the fans weren't going to be there. So to go from 90,000 people on a Sunday night to an empty stadium is, I mean, that's just one of those things.
Wow. Wow. What an experience. What an experience. Going back to the relational aspect between the mentors and the mentees, now
Yeah.
that typically takes place, and I speak as a big brother
Hmm.
for many years. The in person is something particularly early in the early stages of a relationship.
Right.
How has COVID impacted the mentor mentee relationship? And I see a few more people who have Hugo and
Some buddies of mine, I'm sure.
are they?
Yeah.
Jake. Jake has joined in. Berman, it's cold, has joined. So thank you all for tuning in. We're talking to Isaiah. He is with Big Brothers Big Sisters, and we're just getting to know him a little bit. So yeah, so what about the relational aspect of the mentors and the mentees? How has that
Right.
been affected?
I think it was like a pretty, it was almost a quick dash to figure out what was going on when we were all sent home. And then it was like, well, like, what are we going to do with the clients? What are we going to do with our mentors? Um, and just like, everybody's been joking about, oh, like Zoom University, or I graduated from Zoom University, or Zoom this, FaceTime that. I think that's kind of what was the first initial response is, okay, if your little brother or sister has the capabilities to use FaceTime, Skype, please do that. Keep seeing them face to face. Because there is, and I think that's one of the things is with this pandemic, there's been a glaring, spotlight on the digital divide in between communities, and so and that makes more sense with our little brothers and sisters that might not have those capabilities. So I mean, you can either suggest things like, oh, the FaceTime, the Zoom, any of that. I know one of the things that my supervisor Christina Martinez was joking about is using TikTok as like a time to bond, whether it's like learning a dance or any of those viral challenges, right? So that, I mean, that's the thing there is still kind of adapting. Whether it's like, on your iPhone you can play, Monopoly, or you can play like billiards, right? Those are all things that have been used as a replacement of like the actual things that we would be doing in real life right now. So I know slowly but surely there have been some matches that are seeing each other in person, but it obviously is social distancing, whether it's just going to a park, kind of, hanging out in this, just to where there's not that many people, trying to still adhere to the guidelines. But everyone's really relying heavily on social media, and all the other sort of face-to-face replacements that we have now. So yeah, that's been the challenge.
What are the needs? You know, I know that there's been throughout all nonprofit
Hmm.
organizations, there's a need for volunteers. With y'all, it's a need for mentors.
Right.
Um, I know you have programs like Bigs in Blue, matching cops with kids. You're always
Hmm.
looking for men to volunteer. Talk to us a little bit about the initiatives that you all have to recruit men.
Right. Right. So before I got there, we did have a campaign called 300 Men. It was an initiative to recruit 300 men, right? That's self-explanatory. 300 men before Father's Day, I believe, which they did achieve. But something that I always tell when we try to kick off a campaign, more specifically to recruit a certain population, a certain demographic, is when people see that there's a tangible effort from an organization to recruit, or if there's like a campaign, right? They feel like they're giving towards something bigger than themselves. It's like a cause that they're applying for. Instead of saying, yeah, we're always looking for mentors, people are going to say, well, then they must not need them that badly, right? So that was one of those campaigns. I have one of the old shirts, but it says like "Real Men Mentor," which is, I mean, thought provoking, right? I've seen people kind of read that shirt and like kind of wonder like, what does that mean, or what are you referring to? Um, the other initiatives that we've had are, we did create some councils, and I know we were working closely with that. Um, we have the Military Mentoring Advisory Council. So when you think of San Antonio, you think of the Riverwalk, the Spurs, and then Military City, USA, right? It's synonymous with San Antonio, and so one of our things is, we have such a large military population here, and yet we don't have enough mentors coming from that population to help us out. So how can we fix that? How can we correct that? So the Military Mentoring Advisory Council was created, and it's made up of different active duty, veteran, retired, military spouses, dependent children of the military, just to have inside information on how we can reach into the military population, the military community. So we're actually in the middle of another recruitment campaign focused on recruiting 100 military affiliated mentors, right? It's called Operation Big Mentor. We just kicked off Memorial Day. And so to kind of just really quick about one more thing about the military council is that with all the information that we've gotten, all the connections that we've made just through the council, we were able to secure, emailing lists of, all of the commanders on all the bases here in San Antonio, all the volunteer coordinators here in San Antonio, and then even like just the entire family list of, Lackland ISD. So those are all things that we wouldn't have had before without the council, right? Just having kind of one person try to email as many people as possible. Another council is the Black Advisory Council. Again, it was created to how can we start recruiting more, men of color and really focus our efforts into those communities that could use it. And I think the Black Advisory Council is a really, really important council right now in this climate, right? This political climate. When you think about kind of, why people are angry or why people are protesting, you think about how there's this lack of empathy, or hasn't been these relationships or bridges have been burned. So I think, having mentors and having people that you're able to empathize with, having to learn from past experiences, right? They can tell you, well, this is how I, deal with what's going on. I just think that goes hand in hand. And I think that's something that's really important is, just letting everybody know that, a trusted adult can really help, heal with the pain that is being caused, help with the trauma that's as a result of that. But, so yeah, those are the different initiatives. We're always trying to be intentional with where we're trying to recruit volunteers, being transparent with the families, right? So that's really just a couple of initiatives that we're kind of carrying.
I know it's a cliche, but I think organizations like Big Brothers Big Sisters, uh, they truly make a significant impact in
Mm-hmm.
those one-to-one relationships where that one person stepping up to volunteer can make a difference.
Exactly.
Christina Castillo says, "I love hearing about this," and
Awesome.
we just got joined by a few other people as well. So we have about 5 more minutes
Mm-hmm.
left. I'd love to have you back on to talk more about the mentoring initiative
For sure.
of recruiting, because it's a global organization,
Mm-hmm. Right.
and so there are different aspects and different ways of doing it. But at the end of the day, around the world, it's one-to-one mentoring.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what are your thoughts as we're closing down? I know you've posted a lot of memes and a lot of action items to
Right.
donate here and to get involved. What are some of your thoughts and as a young man who grew up here, right? This is your
Right.
home,
Yep. Hometown.
and what's that?
At the hometown. Yeah. Yeah. Grew up here.
What are some of your immediate thoughts?
Right. So I think the biggest thing for me is to see the overwhelming response and the overwhelming support for the Black Lives Matter movement. In 2014 I was up at Texas Tech, and so um, seeing Ferguson and then Michael Brown, and that murder. It was really moving. I think it was still, it's still almost fresh. It's almost like history is repeating itself. So I am overwhelmed, not by my support or whatever it is. I'm just overwhelmed by seeing so many people finally saying enough is enough, being outspoken on social media or in person, right? I think one of the biggest things is that um, the fact that there is opposition to this movement is a little astounding. people can't wrap their heads around why it should be taboo to say Black Lives Matter, or why people are afraid to kind of proclaim that on social media. But I think, with the George Floyd, what happened to George Floyd is tragic, and it hurts to watch that video and kind of see that that's what it took for people to kind of wake up and realize that racism has been rampant all through the history of America. And it's a huge ask. It's a broad statement of trying to end racism, right? It's something that is very, very big ask. But even if it's just the conversations that we're having now, right, are important. If we're able to change one mind, kind of promote this, the anti-racism, idea of, it's either you are against racism or you're not. So those are really my thoughts. Is just being empathetic to the Black community. Realizing that there is so much history of hurt, of trauma, that this is really just, I hope, the beginning of a conversation that need to be had. Hopefully reconciliation with the communities that need to reconcile. And then, justice for George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, for all of our Black brothers and sisters that have lost their lives. So.
Very nicely put, Isaiah. Isaiah Lopez with Big Brothers Big Sisters, and a lot of times I have a friend of mine who posted on Facebook. Sometimes it's not the comments, but it's the question that is being asked, and he asked a simple question. He asked, "How old were you when you had the first time a policeman pulled a gun on you?"
Right.
And I can't. That's never happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed all of his contacts explaining how they were 8 years old and 9 years
Right.
old and even younger, which is, I think it's really a time for those who are speaking a lot in Washington and around, to really take time to empathize and listen. Exactly what you said. I think that's a important thing.
Yes.
So your social media, you could promote your personal one, but if you want people to, because you have that thing Friday night, which is
Yes.
which is very interesting. We're also competing with Snoop Dogg and Chef Andrade, who are also doing lives right
on
now.
Instagram
So.
Live. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
But
Go ahead.
what are your social links, media links that people could reach out and find some more info?
For sure. You could follow me on Instagram. It's Isaiah Lucio Lopez, full name. And yeah, Armin is correct. It's just a quick blurb. Out of sheer boredom and kind of realizing that a lot of people are using their platforms to, whether it's spread joy, awareness, or just even, following that lifelong dream of creating your, fitness Instagram or your cooking page. Decided to make a Instagram live show where, we just, cut it up with some friends, asking them the most random questions, really learn about them, and kind of create community within that. And so it's been a lot of positive feedback. And the running joke is that this is the only show where we hope there's a series finale, right? So the series finale is when we get the all clear and we're able to spend our Friday night somewhere else that's not home. So, but my other one is, the more active one is my Twitter. It's at Reckham Lucio, WRECK, EM Lucio, like Reckham Tech. And just have always have random, thoughts about Latino culture, food, and then obviously the activism that has been kind of overhauled in these last few weeks. So.
Very cool. And of course, bigmentor.org.
Yes.
If you want to find out about the organization and how to get involved. I'll at Castillos, I saw that. I guess they're talking about the IG live that you did.
Right. Well, thank you.
So Isaiah, thanks for jumping on at the last minute. We really appreciate it.
Of course.
I hope we could do this again and talk more about the issues that you're concerned about. Make sure you follow him. He's got some really good content about himself, about the needs of the community, and things that are happening that are relevant to us all, or should be relevant. We will be doing this every now and then, and we're also going to organize something about race at some point to bring in, and I don't know if it'll be a Zoom or an in-person or a
Mhm.
combination of those things. So keep a lookout for that on the World Affairs Council of San Antonio Instagram page. Thank you so much, my friend. Thank you,
Of
everyone, for
course.
tuning in. You all have a great rest of Thursday, and signing off.